Good afternoon. My name is Joy Whear, and this is my husband Kevin. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Willing Warriors. Our episode today is number 6, and it's on making memories. Why are memories important? I personally feel it's important because it's part of the glue that holds a family together. It just gives children a reason to look forward to some of your most simple things in life. It doesn't have to be huge and spectacular, but you would be surprised how much of an impact those little memory makers can be.
So, to provide some biblical undergirding for the thought of making memories, I'm going to be reading from Joshua chapter 4. And a little context here. So, the children of Israel have been redeemed out of Egypt. They have been wandering in the desert for 40 years. Moses now has passed away, and they're getting ready under Joshua's leadership to cross into the promised land. So, this is a place where they're seeking to make memory. So, here the word of the Lord. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, one man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, "Cross over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and each one of you should take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. And when your children ask you in time to come, saying, 'What do these stones mean to you?' Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it crossed over the Jordan, and the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be a memorial to the children of Israel forever." So here they are, picking up simple stones out of the water, putting them down on the ground, and just a constant remembrance or a memorial to tie future generations back to this event. So it's making memories is a wonderful way of connecting with those in the past or participating in the traditions already given and making new memories to connect with those in the future. And it shows us that we're part of something larger than ourselves, something more meaningful. So I'm going to ask my wife to put a little bit of hands and feet to some of our memories, starting with maybe the evening meal.
So, food has always been important at our house. And at breakfast, the children always asked, "What's for lunch?" And at lunch, they wanted to have a foreknowledge of what they were having to expect at dinner time. So I tried to make sure I could give them a little bit idea. Of course, it's mom's prerogative. If I wanted to change it to plan B, I could do that. But anyway, the evening meal generally throughout our children's childhood has been sort of the highlight of the day. Dad has been gone most of the time at work, and when he arrives home, I loved for the house to be full of good smells and an opportunity for all of us to gather around the table. And the children could tell Dad what they had been reading and learning, activities they had during the day, and Dad would share with us some of the activities that he encountered during the day. We'd often talk about bring in world news, just all kinds of just information, but it wasn't everybody grab food and go. We personally did not have a TV in the eating area. It was just really a time we could focus on connecting together. Often, generally, our routine is as a family, we sing a hymn or a psalm, or when the children were little, just a children's song, and then have prayer, and then the conversation and the eating all began. I love to fill the house with I think my children's fond memories. If you learn how to bake bread, you have that, or cookies, smells are so important, and they really help gel memories in there. We would have special meals. Sometimes we might light candles. We would have generally regular plates as opposed to paper plates, but sometimes it was sandwiches, and we might do that. Depends on if there was something else going that evening. But it was special, and we enjoyed spending time together. We didn't light candles every night, so don't feel like that, but there were occasions where we might set a really nice and a fancier table and enjoy that as we conversed.
So what my wife just said, there's also the converse to that, right? We made an effort not to highly participate in sports. We think there can be some value there, but we thought an evening meal, day in and day out, was much more valuable, and we'll stick to that. And we've seen great results. So now let's take it up another level. So God not only set the world in order on a daily basis, and we see His faithfulness. So how do we see His faithfulness? The sun comes up every morning. Imagine the one day when the sun doesn't come up, and it's not because it's hid behind the clouds. We would freak out. God has also set the world in order on a weekly basis. So what's He done? He worked for 6 days, and then He rested on the seventh day. He calls us to enter into that rest with Him in His presence. So anybody familiar with Little House on the Prairie, you might remember Almanzo and the way they observed Sunday. It was a terrible day. It was for lemon suckers. It made you sour. So instead, we think the Word of God would point us towards the Sabbath or the Lord's Day celebration as something, a wonderful time of celebration. So maybe you can tell them a little bit how we made it a celebratory in our house.
Well, we generally try to eat healthy. And Sunday being a day of celebration, I got into the habit of either purchasing donuts or making cinnamon rolls or a pretty coffee cake or something with some fruit and cheese or croissants and Nutella, something special to set it apart. Other days of the week we might just have cereal and scrambled eggs and bagels and yogurt, not all on the same day, but different mornings. So this was definitely different and above. Then I would also often try to prepare, didn't always have to be a fancy meal, but it was usually a larger, quote unquote, the old-fashioned Sunday dinner. It might have the pot roast and mashed potatoes and corn and salad. But we often try to extend and invite and extend hospitality on the Lord's Day so that we could feast and share together. We might even have some glass of wine, not for drunkenness, but so that our children could see the good and the fat of the Lord, for wine makes the heart merry. And it was an opportunity to open our home to others.
So to add a little bit more, not to be scandalous, but we even would allow our children at a young age to have a little bit of wine, maybe a shot glass full, to try to teach them at an early age what it meant to enjoy the good gifts of the Lord. So we talked about how God has set the world in order on a daily basis and a weekly basis. Now step back a little bit and see what He's done on a much broader basis. So on a yearly basis, God told the Israelites, right? They would have new moon festivals once a month. They would have Passover, the Pentecost, or the Feast of First Fruits, the ingathering. They would have all these different ceremonies and festivals that they would gather together. And so the Israelites were taught celebrate, 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 celebrate. Remember God's goodness when the first fruits come in, when the new moon comes out, when the harvest comes in. All these different times they would gather together, not individually, but they would gather together. And they did this. We're supposed to do this generation after generation after generation. We're not calling you back to those Jewish festivals because they were all just a shadow of Christ to come. What we're calling you to is the mentality of making your house a regular place of celebration. So maybe you can tie in a little bit of our celebrations that we've grabbed a hold of.
When my children were young, a friend of mine I thought had such a sweet little celebration. First day they saw snow falling, they would have cookies and hot chocolate, and she always tried to keep on hand little cute festive plates, maybe with a little snowman or snowflakes or something, or napkins that were set apart. And I'm surprised our married children, a lot of them, oh, it's the first day of snow, Mom. We made cookies and hot chocolate. So that just warms my heart because it's not a religious ceremony or anything. It's just a fun little tradition that again shows God's faithfulness and provision and the beauty of just snow. We also have over the course of the years some New Year's celebrations, and of course a lot of times I would have a set menu of like pork roast and sauerkraut and mashed potatoes and green beans. And then we also tried, and I haven't as much over the last few years as our children have grown and most of them are gone, but the changing of the seasons, what a wonderful way to celebrate God's faithfulness. And so sometimes we would have a traditional spring feast and a traditional first day of summer feast and a first day of fall and first day of winter. And our menu mostly was planned around that celebration. You could also incorporate another little tradition of a game or something that you could play. And one other one that we enjoyed over the years we would celebrate with our church family is Reformation Day, which falls on October 31st. And one of the highlights there was, of course, we would have a piñata that was full of candy. And my children definitely looked forward to that day.
Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek. So we call that piñata smashing of the papal bull. So it was often the shape of a bull. Joke aside, and since this is close to Christmas time, I want to touch on that a little bit. So with the birth of Christ, I know for those that are fixated, we don't actually know the date. But you know what? It's a great time to celebrate. Here we are in the dark of winter. Light up the world, right? Light up the world. Join with the angels that came and rejoiced. Join with those shepherds that found their way. Join with those wise men that traveled far away to see the Christ child. So here we are, all this great music around the Christmas time. It's a wonderful time of celebrating is God coming to this world to set things right. I've had a chance with my job to travel all over the world, and I'm just shocked when I go places. All the Christmas decorations I see in places where I didn't know Christ was confessed. But here they are celebrating God coming in the flesh to reconcile the world, this world that had groaned under a load of sins. So maybe touch a few of our Christmas traditions.
One I remember, and sometimes this might cause my children to grimace, but I loved Christmas sweaters. And so even if they weren't full out Christmas, you might have snowflakes or red sweaters for the guys. And I always enjoyed that. Like I said, we have quite a few family pictures. And some of them were like, oh, thanks, Mom. And others really enjoyed it. One thing I did many, many years ago, we still have it hanging in our house this time of year, is I made a large candy calendar, and I made it large because we have a large family. So it's not necessarily an Advent calendar per se, but the first day of December, so there's 25 pockets, and we always put a little one piece of candy for each child over the years in the calendar. So at the end of our evening meal, once their chores were done, they could have a little gift of candy every day. And we counted down to December 25th. I also, along with that, most of my children have candy calendars in their homes as well now. And a lot of them have incorporated doing a special little treat. It doesn't have to be a sweet or a candy. It can be doing a special little craft or going to the Nutcracker, or, fill in the blank. So you can be creative with that as much as you want. A lot of times we would do Advent readings during this time of year. We would have a little booklet that talked about the angels and a week for the wise men, a week for the shepherds. And obviously we lit the big candle to celebrate Christmas Day. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, obviously we had special foods. We could make Christmas cookies, homemade. Oh, one of our favorite traditions, and even as our children have gotten a little older and have their own children, I've sort of said, well, maybe we should. No, Mom, we have to do that. So each October, we would put anybody that was age 5 and older, as far as siblings and Kevin and I. If you were older than 5 and older, you pick one person's name in our family and you make a homemade gift for that person. So I've been amazed by some of the beautiful things my children have made, and Kevin and I join into. It's still a lot of fun. And as our children have gotten married, we include them. We don't normally do the grandchildren in all of that, but some of my married children have talked about maybe doing a cousin exchange, but I'll let them do that one.
So here we are, redeemed by Christ, and it says rejoice and rejoice always. So we want to make our life a place of rejoicing in all kinds of events. So interesting event in Scripture. So Isaac, Abraham's son, is weaned. And what is Abraham doing? He's having a party. He's having a weaning party. Now, I'm not sure, there might be some mothers when their children, nursing babies, start their teeth coming in, they're ready to have a weaning party. But this just is a good signal to us that we can celebrate all kinds of things, and we should find reasons to do it. So maybe you can talk about some of our odd or places where we have different celebrations.
When a child loses their first tooth, that can be a really exciting, sometimes a little traumatic depending on the child. And so you can make that sort of a celebration. Of course, we celebrate things such as birthdays, and many years ago I purchased a little plate. I don't remember where they're available. You might even be able to find them on Amazon or other Etsy. But it's celebrating the gift of you. And so we put that generally for birthday. We called it our birthday plate. But sometimes somebody would have another reason to celebrate an accomplishment or whatever. And we would let them have that plate. Even when guests come to our home, if they have a birthday or something else, we'll put the birthday plate at their place also to celebrate anniversaries. And it doesn't have to be big, expensive things, but to teach your children, these are things that reflect God's faithfulness and events that reflect God's faithfulness, and we should rejoice and give thanks.
So let me wrap this up. We started with the Israelites crossing the Jordan, and we are like them. We are people given to forgetting. And God calls us to remember, and he calls us to rejoice. And so develop those traditions. Connect yourself or take on those traditions that have been handed down to you and embrace them, love them. Maybe continue them, and then maybe develop new ones. And so now what you're doing is you're connecting with those that come before you and those that are going to come after you. And it's wonderful for children to understand their place in history and continuing on with those wonderful things. All along the way, we're celebrating God's goodness to us. What can be wrong with that? So let me encourage you to make memories and develop this wonderful habit. And fathers, you have a wonderful helpmeet that'll probably put legs and hands and feet, but help her set the course, help your wife set the course, and be a part of this. Don't be a stick in the mud. Rejoice as well. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you again.